Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Casa podcast. I'm really glad that you've all gotten the chance to tune in today. I'm your host. My name is Edward Lin, and joining us today is the one and only Jeremy Liu. Jeremy is the current fundraising chair of the Chinese American Students Association, and he's been doing great work. He's actually been starting up the Casa Fund Foundation, and we'll probably be talking more about that later, right, Jeremy?
Yep.
All right, great. So, how have you been? How's life treating you so far?
Life's not bad. Have a lot going on in school, but handling it well.
Okay.
Midterms are midterms. You know how it
Yeah,
is.
I know.
Yeah.
That's definitely tough. What midterms have you taken so far?
Mainly because I take all business classes, so they're
Mhm.
mainly for my business classes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like what kind of classes in particular?
Like finance, operations management,
Okay.
managerial economics.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm actually with Jeremy in that class right now, and we just got our test scores back. So, yeah. But yeah, like, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself then? So, what's your major? You said you were a business major, right?
Right. I am I'm a finance major.
Oh, okay. Great, great. So, why'd you pick that?
Well, partially because that my dad is in similar industry, and since I was young, very young, that he didn't tell me much, but just by interacting with him, like hearing him on calls, and like through interacting with his like friends and coworkers, it just kind of got me like thinking like, hey, this might be one of the things that I want to do.
Oh, interesting.
I came into college not knowing what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But like I guess by the process of elimination, I kind of just like, hey, I don't want to go into pre-med.
Oh yeah,
but-
just like everyone and their mothers, right? Pre-med is the thing these days.
Well, it's kind of different for me because like since I was young, I've never had any like good interactions with that side.
Oh, I
Because
see. I
whenever
see.
in movies when there's surgeries, my hands will always shake.
Oh no.
That's why I know I won't go into like anything related to
I
like
see.
that side.
I see. So
Yeah.
do you get like grossed out pretty easily?
I don't get grossed out, but like when I look at for example doing surgeries when people cut up someone's body.
Oh yeah.
Like my hands will shake. I would get like very weak, but I don't like get grossed out.
I see. I see.
So that plus my dad, I kind of just like followed along, went into the finance route, and then
Great.
through interacting with things that I have with the finance major, I'm loving it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So do you have any like cool stories about like, I don't know, just like things that you and your dad have talked about, or like just moments where you've really thought that like it really impacted your decision to go into business?
Well, it probably came after that I decided to become a finance major.
Okay.
It was spring break when I went home. Coincidentally, my dad came home too. He actually works in China. He comes back like every couple of months. And yeah, we never talk about business just because like I guess he separates his professional and personal life a lot.
Oh, okay, that's
right. So
cool.
yeah, when I got back from home, he was asking me how's school going, and I was just like telling him school, and then that's when I first started investing. And then he asked me about that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, he asked me about that, and I was telling him everything I knew, and then he was like, wow, kind of impressed and like in a sense proud. And that's when I was like, I guess like because I enjoyed what I'm doing, and I was just saying things that I learned, not necessarily trying to like impress him, but that made him proud, and like I was like, hey, it's pretty cool.
Wow, yeah, that's really great. I mean, like, whatever makes the pops happy, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like, I kind of actually have a similar story to that. I'm a microbiome major because my dad, when I was like 3 or 4 years old, I found his old microbiome textbook on this one shelf that we had, and I would always just like flip through and look at the pictures inside because I was like 4 years old. I didn't understand anything in there, so like. Yeah, that really like drove me, I think, to be really into STEM. So it's kind of cool that we both have, a significant influence from our father's side. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, now that we're on the topic of just like parents and all that, why don't we just talk about, growing up in, whatever background that you have. So why don't you like tell me, just your entire life story? How about that?
Okay. So let me give you my life story speech. I was born in China, Beijing specifically. I was there for 14 years, the first 14 years of my life, and I moved to U.S. For school, starting with freshman year high school.
Okay.
It was I wouldn't say it was very traditional Chinese because my whole mom's side of his family is in Jersey, so I come and visit every summer, and just by at home, my mom will always like teach me things like I don't want to say the American way, but like just like how it is like in the Western world. Like she would take me on weekends to diners, like probably like one American diner in the whole Beijing. Yeah, and she will like she will like teach me how to celebrate Christmas. Just these kind of little things.
And so I'm sorry for interrupting, but I'm just kind of curious. So was your mom's side of the family already in Jersey when you were born?
Yeah, my mom actually was she grew up here in Jersey in the States.
Wow.
Yeah, and her whole family did. And she met my dad when she used to work for the airline. I mean, she still does.
Wow, that's so cool.
For United, yeah.
Yeah.
And my grandma does business in China too, and she happened to be my dad's business partner when my mom met my dad.
Wow.
And that's how my parents met, and they ended up getting together. Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like two completely opposite sides of the world.
Right.
And
interesting story. Yeah. It's a story I always tell people that
that's
make
so
them
cool.
laugh a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you got that desired result from me too. All right, yeah. So continue. So you were born in China, and then your mom would take you around and show you the American way.
Right.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, my dad's very traditional. Like even though he was born in China, he grew up in China, very 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 like a little town I know anything about.
Really? Okay.
Right. It's like down south.
Oh,
and yeah, like when he was older, he had a chance to go to Italy.
Wow.
Like someone like one of his family friends was going to Italy, and my grandma was like, "Hey, please take him."
Because that's not really something you hear a lot.
Right. And my dad grabbed onto the opportunity, went to Italy, and that's when he started, expanding outwards. Like he started having his own restaurant, and then like he had his own business in Italy, and then he gave it all to my uncle. He came back to China and started doing business in China.
So how old was he when he went to Italy?
I think he was around 22, 23.
Oh,
he after elementary school, after middle school, my bad. He didn't go to high school. He didn't go to any college.
Wow,
he learned
that's
everything
really cool.
along the way by himself. Yeah. So my point is like even though he went to Italy, my dad's side is like very very traditional. Like every Chinese New Year, I would go back to where my grandma is, that little town to celebrate. And like when my grandma passed away, we had like the Chinese ritual. Yeah. So like I guess my whole life has been like very composed of both sides. The American Chinese, the Chinese American way from my mom's side, and the very traditional Chinese way from my dad's side.
Right.
Yeah, so I was living, but mostly because I was in China and I was interacting with like my colleagues from elementary, middle school in China. Like I would say like I've been living the pretty relatively typical Chinese way until I moved here to U.S. It was relatively easier for me to adjust compared to like fresh off the boat. Because of my mom and
I see.
That side.
Yeah,
but it was still tough, and I had to adjust it. And after spending 2 years of hard working, getting my English skills to where I am now, the last 2 years of high school was very eventful, and now I'm here at college.
Yeah. Wow, that's really just so cool, because that's really not a narrative that you hear like all the time, where your parents meet, one from America and one from China, and they come together, and then you have this really just amazing upbringing where you get the full, I guess if we want to call it that, the Chinese experience, and then you come to America and then you get this. So I mean, obviously that's going to come with challenges, right? Like you were talking about earlier how you had to spend 2 years working hard just to get the language down. So can you talk about like what kind of roadblocks, or like what were the biggest barriers that you had to face?
So other than language itself, I would say the biggest barrier is the way how I integrate into the American culture.
I see.
Right? Because when I went to school, not only I can't communicate, just a lot of things that like I see other people doing, or what they say, it's just like very different compared to China.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess that would be like the biggest roadblock to how I can adjust to the culture.
I see.
Like,
do you want to elaborate a little bit on that? Just like what exact differences would there be?
So like so I'm like used to in class, very serious, listen, like do everything I can to catch up to the teacher, and I'm used to being like from in school from 6 in the morning to 10 at night.
That's crazy.
And I'm you're right. I'm used to being like, just like other than going to school, it's just like eat, sleep, and do homework.
Yeah.
But like in the U.S. it's completely different.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right. It's a very relaxing class. Teachers, if you ask for help, teacher helps you like gladly. You get out of school at 2-3 in the afternoon. You have so much time to do other stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Like for me, it was a little different because I now it's a little now thinking about it, it's like, hey, you can just like go out and do it. Right. Like for me, I would say like when I first moved here, I didn't know what to do because like when I had so much free time, I didn't know what to do. It seems like something like that people here are like, hey, just go out and do stuff. But back then, it's not something that I would think of doing. Right. Yeah. So, and not only that, just like, I guess interacting with people, it's hard when you don't know how to communicate with them. Cause like when you try to communicate with your, for example, people at my school and my teachers, they treat you like someone who is struggling, just came from China, trying his best to, be part of the community, not as someone like, hey, I can be friends with him.
Right. Yeah. So, definitely.
Yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing.
Okay. But, I see. So like the way that other people saw you, right, was also just really different then.
It was very different. Like, so going back to that, first 2 years was very difficult for me because basically I didn't know what to do. Even though my mom was able to help me with my English, it's when I go to high school and like try to learn things in a completely English environment, it's completely different.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do, right? So like I set my mind and I decided to work really hard to like, so I'm not in a situation where I'm like, I hate myself here. So, right, after those 2 years of hard working, shutting myself in my own room, doing stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, like trying my best to get to where I am now.
Right.
I found some friends junior year, and then they were like, "Oh my God, you're like so different compared to like last 2 years."
Really?
It's
wow,
like,
that's
like the
crazy.
way. Yeah, it's just the way.
A true glow up, if you ask me.
It sounds like a very. When I speak to some people, they're like, "Hey, it's such a fake story." But like,
no, I don't think it's fake at all.
But like,
though.
it really happens. It really happens. Like, you do find people who are willing to take you in.
Right.
And like, the way you communicate with people do make a big impression on people, how they think of you, and that can be
definitely.
very, very different.
Definitely. Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's like a very relatable struggle, right? Though, like the glow up kind of thing. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who first 2 years of high school, they not a lot of friends, or like just going through their own personal struggles, and then maybe like I don't know, at some point there's that big turning point. Like, I mean, like for myself, junior year was when I hit like my final growth spurt thing, and like I went from being like shorter than a majority of my classmates to actually being able to like see eye to eye with people, like literally and I guess figuratively too by that association. Yeah, but obviously that's not nearly as I guess deep and philosophical as like that kind of mental and like work based change that you had. So I find that really cool. I actually admire that a lot. That you just like worked. You like shut yourself in your room and just like changed yourself.
It was a hard thing. Like, it's something that I think back now and be like, hey, how did I do that?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Obviously, you can. A lot of people.
Right.
Like think about like how many. If you think how many people that just come straight from trying to start high school freshman year,
right?
Definitely a lot. Right.
No, yeah,
but
so many.
But it's just different. Like a lot of people, they find like similar people in the same community. Like for example, a lot of international students come here. They just interact with international students, right? They find similar community to have that thing that they can go to instead of like,
I mean, isn't that the nature of man though?
It is.
We want to be with people similar to ourselves.
For me, I guess I can say I got lucky because the town where I moved to, there was barely an Asian. Like not even talking about like, even though like all the Asians there are like American Asian,
right?
Asian American, my bad.
Yeah.
And like just like for me, it's tough for me to find that community that I can like keep speaking Mandarin to, keep like interacting the way I trying to. Yeah. That's why I forced myself to change, and
I see.
This is what came out of.
I see. But I do want to say though, like I know a lot of international students, and I want to just like put it out there that not all international students are actually like that. I mean, like I know a lot. I'm not gonna name drop anybody. Sorry if you wanted that shout out. You know who you are. But Yeah, like I can definitely say that not all international students are like that. A lot of them are actually really willing to reach out, and all it
Right.
takes is just like, hey, what's your name, or like something like that.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
I mean, like I can say for myself, like both of my parents were definitely very driven international students when they were in America. They were both in Michigan at the time, actually, and my dad was doing I think it was his PhD or maybe his postdoc at the University of Michigan, and like he definitely was not one to just hang out with other international students or like stay in that kind of bubble, because I feel like that's something that's really easy to do. Instead,
Right.
he like reached out, talked to a lot of his professors, he was like a TA for a long period of time, had a lot of exposure to some really cool stuff, and that's actually the reason why he was able to stay in America, because that ended up landing him a job in pharmaceuticals, and here I am now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's just these little steps that you take, these little like challenges you want to take on.
Right,
really
definitely,
make a change,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. But I think like another big challenge though then that faces, the international student community would then just be how can we say that, like how can we say to them just break out of your shell, when we ourselves, like we know, right, ourselves that we are the same, right? We want
Yeah.
to stick with people that we're familiar with the same social tropes and the things that we've grown up with, right? What we're comfortable with. So what would you say is like a way that we can escape that?
Well, I wouldn't say there is a way, because not everything has a way. Especially when it comes to this, it's just like how bad you want it, and like how
Wow.
you interpret it.
Okay.
Like a lot, like not everything is there's a solution to it. But like for
Right.
me, no one ever told me what to do. Like there's
Mhm.
no one there to guide me. Like I can't just keep like being depressed and be like, oh, I hate this, I hate this. Right?
Aw.
It's just like like one little step that you want to take, make you
Right.
step out of that like bubble, out of that circle. Like for
Mhm.
example, like you said, a lot of international students, all it takes is like, hey, what's your name, right?
Right. Yeah.
How about you reach out to people, hey, what's your name? Like
Okay. So turn it around. Yeah.
right, turn around. It's like you have to expect to make that step yourself, but
Right.
not have people tell you to,
I
or like
see.
someone to help you make that step.
I see. So would you say that you ascribe to, I guess I don't want to call it a school of thought, because that's really not what it is, but rather maybe I guess just a way of a worldview, let's call it, of nothing is ever handed to you. Would you say that like that's your kind of thing?
Yeah. I agree. Nothing is ever handed to you for free. There's nothing in this world for free.
Yeah.
You can't just expect anything, right?
I see. Yeah.
like
For our Chinese speaking listeners out there, 天上不会掉馅儿饼,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And for everyone else, a rough translation of that is like I guess you could call them what is 馅儿饼? It's like hotcakes?
No, it's like like the meat thing that you put
Yeah,
inside.
yeah, like like filling cakes. I don't know. They're
Meat
just
fillings,
yeah.
fillings.
I guess we can call it that, but like it's meat pies maybe is like the closest thing.
Yeah.
It's basically just saying like meat pies aren't gonna fall out of the sky. Kind of like money doesn't grow on trees, except with a more like inspiring drive kind of thing.
Right.
I think that's actually a really common thing too in at least the Chinese culture that I've been exposed to from my mom and dad and the rest of my family too. It's always been for me growing up. You gotta work hard, go out and make a name for yourself, kind of thing, and you gotta separate yourself from the pack. Would you say that that's kind of the same environment that you grew up in, or do you think that your parents had a different philosophy about bringing you up?
No, my parents are actually, in terms of like teaching me and educating me, they're complete opposite of like the traditional Chinese parents and Asian families, because they never forced me to do anything and never tell me you gotta work hard. Like hey, they never insist of ask me like my grades at school, like how I'm doing. Like you have to work hard. Like you can't get this new iPhone if you don't work hard. Stuff like that.
Wow.
Right? Like they're not like
Yeah.
that. And that's what I mean. Like because they never really forced me to do anything, that's why I guess that's really like that makes me have the personality of like I need to take things myself. Right? Because like
yeah,
because I feel like a lot of people that I interact with in China, they work so hard, they do so many extracurricular activities like violin, piano, like ESL class, which is like English as a second language, like English classes outside of school. But when there's no one there to push them, what's gonna happen?
Right.
Like it's not like
Right.
they're gonna stop. Like
Mm-hmm.
what's gonna happen?
Right.
For me, there was no one there to push me other than myself. Like
Yeah.
my parents,
Yeah.
they never really did anything. It's all myself.
Mhm.
So I feel like both kind of education can work out,
Mm-hmm.
but after all, everything is dependent on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely see that philosophy. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, my parents kind of adopted that later on. You know, during high school, it was like, I guess first 2 years of high school, I got pushed very hard. You know, I think my dad drew the analogy of like a train, like the train. What's the thing? The train, like the head of the train. What's that called again? The engine? Is that what it is? Is that what you call it?
In English, I don't know. I know what you mean though. Like
Yeah, like the head of the train.
that's
you
like
know?
guiding through the rest.
Right. It's like, you know, your parents can be that for a while, right? But eventually, you have to take that role onto yourself. It sounded a lot. It sounded a lot cooler in Chinese, you know, when he was talking about it. Yeah. All right, and we are back. So, what were we talking about again?
Education, like how your parents.
Oh yeah, that's right. We were talking about I had just said, how, yeah, like my dad drew that analogy and how it sounded cooler in Chinese. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna pick back up here. Yeah, so I definitely can relate to that. It's just that for me it happened a little later in life. So what other ways do you think that your parents have kind of like influenced you in that part of upbringing? Why don't we talk about culture actually? Just like exposure to cultures. You mentioned earlier that your mom showed you like the American ways of things. Do you want to like elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, if we're gonna talk about how like they do like how they did what they did to like raise me.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely there's a big separation between my mom and my dad.
Yeah.
My mom would always yell at me when I did something wrong and would always come after me with a quote right afterwards or just like some kind of life lesson that she would tell me. It's so common that now I still hear it.
Really?
I hear something from her at least twice a day.
That's
it's
really
just
funny.
how that is. Like right, the biggest thing that she always used to tell me is like the world doesn't revolve around you. Like,
really?
Yeah. Like,
interesting.
When we were kids, we all used to be selfish. We cry for things that we don't.
Honestly, I feel like even grown people are selfish. Like I even like I catch myself being selfish all the time.
It's just like but like when we're young, we can be unreasonably.
Okay, yeah, sure. Let's put it that
selfish.
way.
She would say, hey, the world doesn't revolve around you, and she would say that to me all over and over again, and she would refer to like her younger days in the U.S. and blah blah blah. I wouldn't say that's like really the American way, but compared to my dad, who always uses like these old Chinese analogies, my dad is definitely more traditional, right? Like my dad never. Yeah. He never really yelled at me. He never really gave me quotes.
Right.
But just like when like he never he not like my mom. He tells me things when I like out of nowhere. See, my mom only tells me things when I did something wrong. It's just sometimes like when me and my dad were together, we see other people doing things or like we are doing something. He'll throw at me like those analogies.
Like any examples?
Okay.
Dig real deep there. Yeah.
But like one of the things that he told me was, is like when I think we were walking. It was like in China. Well, now too, like there's those nights or days at school that parents come in and talk to teachers.
Yeah, kind of like open house.
Right, open house. Yeah. So in China, it was like a Friday. Yeah, because like that's when all the parents can come in. Like we're in a class, parents behind us.
Was this every Friday?
No, it's like once a year.
Once a year, gotcha.
And like one of the kids was like being rude to the parents. Right. This is like. I don't remember the exact situation. Right, and my dad, like my dad didn't say anything. It's like that same day on our car ride home, he's like, I always tell people that as a person, no matter how annoying the other person can be, if they're elderly, you can get upset, you can get annoyed, but the thing that you must have is respect. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's like the big thing in Chinese culture.
Yeah.
Respect elderlies.
Right.
Right.
That's really common. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
That's something
So-
you hear all the time.
Right. So, just like these things, as these situations, like my dad always throws these like, these like very
Mm-hmm.
cultural emphasize Chinese culture
Yeah.
emphasize
Yeah.
like
Definitely.
life lessons and ideologies
Yeah.
that me, and on the other hand, my mom would throw me like the more like modern,
Uh-huh.
like more like on quotes.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I'm sure we can all tell, the world doesn't revolve around you is something that, you would see out of, like, I don't know, just like a family-oriented sitcom. Whereas, like, respect your elders, that's something that's definitely,
Right.
has a lot more, I'd say, like, cultural significance.
Right.
Yeah, so I remember, like, when I was a kid, the thing that I heard the most was actually from my grandparents. My grandma especially would say this a lot, but it was like 学如逆水行舟, and the rough translation of that is yeah, and Jeremy's laughing right now because I know he's heard it a bunch of times, but it basically means like learning is like rowing against the current, rowing a boat against the current. And the second part to that is 不进则退, right? And that's like if you don't go forward, you're moving backwards. And that's I feel like I'm really grateful, honestly, that they've told that to me, because like I actually catch myself, thinking about how annoyed I was that like every single day they would talk to me about it. When I went to Chinese school, they would talk to me about it. When I went to, I don't know, like when I did well on a test, even when I did well, they would still say it to me. And that was just really funny. Just thinking about that. And now like I actually catch myself saying that to my younger sister in those same exact scenarios, whether it's to to give her a little bit of a push forward, to work harder on whatever she might be doing, or if it's just like as a reminder to myself, and I feel like I'm misusing the word irony here, but if you really think about it, it kind of is situational irony, right? Because it's like something you wouldn't expect, I guess.
Well, hey, when we're young, we don't know better.
Yeah, exactly. Like when we're young, we don't know that this kind of stuff is actually useful. We just see that like it's repeated so often, and all we know how to do is get annoyed at it, right? But yeah, so much. I'm definitely really appreciative of that. So, you did say then that you were born in China, right? And then you moved here in high school. So, do you consider yourself to be Chinese American?
So I actually 2 days ago, my cousin who is a freshman at Baruch, it's a college in New York City.
Uh-huh.
He's taking a sociology class,
Interesting.
and he sent me a set of questions that he wanted me to answer. And one of the questions was, do you consider yourself as Chinese or Chinese American? Right?
Interesting.
So how I answered it was, if you play by the bucks, I can consider myself as Chinese American because I'm an American citizen. I consider myself as pretty integrated in the American culture.
Uh-huh.
But I would like to consider myself as Chinese just because I spent 14 years there.
Right.
That's not something I can throw away easily, and I have no shame of that.
Right. And that's the first 14 years of your life, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's
right.
such a huge impact.
Right. As much as although I'm not like the very very traditional, like I didn't like live, like with both my parents, like fully Chinese.
Right.
Because
like,
of my mom.
yeah.
I still consider myself as Chinese because just the things that I interacted, like just the things I saw, the things I know, the things I learned. Whether it's like the Chinese culture, or like like some things that like in the society there take as like normal.
Right. Like Chinese street smarts. Even.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Just like like so many things are in me right now that makes me think I am. It's not that I'm more Chinese than Chinese American, but I consider myself as Chinese.
Right. And
Chinese
like I feel like you can't really discuss identity, especially along the lines of culture for people like us, whether we're Chinese American or Chinese or like any other in between, right? Like I feel like it's very hard to talk about that without discussing how we exist on a spectrum. That it's not just like quantized. I'm not Chinese if I'm born in China, and I'm not Chinese American if I'm born in America, right? There's this whole thing of who do you belong with, and I feel like that's a really tough question for people like us who, whether we're born in China and we moved to America, or we were born in America with Chinese parents, or even like, I guess if you really want to stretch it a little bit, if you're American and you're born in China and then you come back to America, like, I actually have a friend who did that, and he says that, it's living that kind of lifestyle is very difficult. Just finding a place to fit in, right? How would you say you've kind of, I guess, adapted maybe, or what are some kinds of things that you've faced, finding your fitting in spot, finding your home identity?
Well, I never like, as I moved along, I never really had much thought of, like, where I belong in terms of identity wise.
Sure.
I knew I was Chinese. I knew I lived in China. I knew what I know, what I learned, who I am, and I just moved along with it. Like, it's not like me now, like acting more the American way, knowing more words, like, dab, slang, gang, these things. Like, it's not like knowing these makes me now in the American group,
Yeah.
So like, and it's not like me eating ramen, rice every day, or like, speaking Chinese to people, watching C-pop, make me more in the Chinese group.
Right.
It's just like, I know a lot of people struggle to find, especially like the balance, or like, am I Chinese or Chinese American?
Right.
But for me, it's just like, if you have the Chinese culture in you, and if you
it's internal.
If you have if you have, if you know, I guess, the American way, then what really is the point? There's like, it's, although I guess like it's.
Would you call it a gut feeling?
Yes, I guess it's a little ignorant of me of saying like, why do you care? But like, seriously, I don't care. Like,
wow. Interesting. That's a hot take if you ask me.
It is. It is. A lot of people have argued with me about it, but it's for me, like, I can interact with anyone. It's not like put me in like this, like the Chinese American group. It's like me being different, and put me in like the Chinese group, me being different. Like,
so you'd say that your personality is consistent within all the groups.
Right.
It's just wherever you happen to float into.
Right.
I see.
Right.
I
like,
see.
no matter where I am still Chinese. I have the Chinese culture in me, and I know, I guess I'm an American.
Well, I guess I can say that definitely. I admire the confidence that you have in your Chinese American kind of hybrid identity. But what would you say, I guess, for the people out there who don't necessarily feel super secure with that identity that they've placed themselves in? For those people who might change depending on the group that they're in, and kind of are just floaters in general.
See, the thing is, like, for example, if I grew up here, right? Let's say, a person was born in the U.S., grew up here, went to Chinese school, have very traditional Chinese parents.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And people ask you, do you consider yourself Chinese American or Chinese? Right.
Right. Well, how would they answer that?
Like, my biggest point is like, why, like, does answering either way makes you inferior, right? Like, I know a lot of Chinese Americans, they tend to avoid the Chinese community because they don't want to feel embarrassed. Embarrassed of what? Like, are you just afraid of like what other people would judge you? Oh my God, you're so Chinese, right? What's like, why? Like, why do you care about what other people think?
Yeah.
But like, I guess like for people out there that are struggling to find, what group they're in,
right?
I think it is wrong for you to think that there's a group, right? Like, I guess like, but again, there's a difference between being Chinese American and having the Chinese American culture.
Yeah.
Because I always tell people, like, Chinese American culture is its own thing now. It's not. It's not just Chinese living in America.
Yeah.
Right. But like, if you have to like identify yourself as Chinese American or as Chinese, I guess like, other than being played by the books, there's not much difference.
I see. I actually really like that way of thinking about things. That's really new to me. Just like the way that you are is the way that you are. Why do you care about how we want to define things for you, right? That's actually really cool.
After all, it's like my own opinion. Like, I'm sure like
Oh yeah, I'm
if
sure
we- if
other
we-
people will
right.
disagree with
And
you.
if we look back to it, like
Mhm.
there's definitely a lot of stuff that I'm like, hey, what is like people be like, hey, what is he talking about?
Right, right.
You know, but at the same
yeah,
time, like
yeah,
you know, I'm just saying what I'm believing in, and like after all, do we really know anything?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so.
Wow. After all, do we really know anything? A quote to go down in the books. Can we get somebody to write that one down? Don't forget me when you're famous, Jeremy. Don't forget me when you're famous. All right, so that's actually really cool. Just thinking about identity in that way. But earlier you were also saying like people are gonna disagree with you, and disagreement is completely natural. I mean,
Yeah.
right? Like you talk to people who disagree with you, so you can get a more diverse set of views. And I think that you've really brought that today.
Right.
So I'm gonna ask you kind of a more fun question, just like ease up the mood a little, I guess. So, can you tell me something, right, that you believe is 100% true to no doubt, like no doubt about it, it's 100% true. You believe in it with a passion, but just nobody seems to agree with you on.
Nobody seems to agree with
Something
me.
that you are very passionate about, but other people just don't get. Is there
Ooh.
anything like that?
Do you want a deep one or like I guess it's a fun question. I'm not going.
Why don't we start out with, like a fun answer, and then we can talk about, that deeper side of things if you're willing to spill the tea for that one.
The fun thing, well, my answer would be Netflix is overrated.
Wow, incredible. That's really a hot take. Please explain.
Netflix and chill, we all love it. We all love it, Imagine yourself after a hard-working day,
Okay.
get back home, take a hot shower,
Right.
lay on your bed, relax, and watch Netflix for the night.
Sure, sure.
You love it, right? But
yeah.
I can enjoy a lot of other things without it. Like I can get home, I can just like if I'm a little nerdy, I'll read a book. Or if I have a girlfriend,
man of
I'll
culture.
spend some time with my girlfriend, with my family. I feel like Netflix and chill, although it's a good entertainment, it's a thing that everyone loves. It's not something like so incredible that
Yeah.
it's hard to explain. But
yeah, like
everyone's like, oh my god, Netflix and chill.
Okay,
Like what do you do this week?
I
Netflix
see
and chill.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely see that. It's like, it's the thing that everyone seems to do with their free time, and
Also, it's just
you just
me.
don't get it.
Right. It's just me that I used to watch a shit ton of movies, a shit ton of shows, and a lot of TV series, and sometimes some anime too.
Okay.
But
yeah.
Gradually that began starting to hurt me more in terms of having no time to do other stuff.
Yeah.
And I would spend whole day,
Wow.
No, all right, everyone does this, right? When people tell you, oh my god, I finished the whole season today.
Oh yeah.
How much time do you think that took? A whole day.
Yeah.
What do you think they did this whole time? Lay on the bed and watch the show, right?
Yeah. There's just so many more productive things.
Right. Exactly.
And so you think that it's overhyped for the amount of positive things it brings to life versus the detriment that it brings.
Right. People would be like, oh my god, he's so serious. He's talking about productivity, but come to realization and tell me afterwards, this is what life is really about.
Yeah, what life is really about, that's
not saying
I thought we were having a fun discussion here. Yeah, it just went deep, guys. It just went deep. Wow. That's really interesting actually, because one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever taken from anyone is this one statement. It's, if it's not extremely fun or extremely productive, just don't do it. And it seems so obvious, right? Like if you hear that, like if somebody tells you that, it's like you hit yourself in the head and it's like, oh yeah, duh, right? But really though, can we say to ourselves, I have never done anything that wasn't extremely fun or extremely productive? And I will be the first person, right? I will be the first person to tell you, absolutely not. Right? I waste my time all the time, right?
Yeah, this is a fun question.
Oh, okay, look. Forget about the fun and not fun question for a second, but let's talk about that, right? It's really interesting to me how time is so valued, and everyone's like, oh, time is what is it? Like time is money, and you don't got much time. But then we go and we do these things with that valuable time that's just squandering it, right? Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously
Well,
I think.
I don't want to be arrogant and say, hey, don't have fun at all.
Yeah.
And just like work hard.
Sure,
hard.
but I mean, but that takes out the extremely fun part, right?
Right. I disagree with your statement.
Really, you're gonna disagree
I'm
with me
gonna
on that
disagree
one?
because
Interesting.
not extremely fun doesn't mean it's not fun. Sometimes
Okay.
something for me, for example, playing basketball was not extremely fun.
Okay.
But fun.
Sure.
I can do fun things as a stress relief. Not everything. I feel like not everything in life is about productivity, and other than that, not everything in life other than productivity is about extremely fun. So I feel like it's good to have little funs once in a while. It's good to try different things, have different entertainments, and sometimes take your foot off of the productivity treadmill for a little bit and
Yeah,
relax.
definitely.
It's not bad, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. I can see that. Yeah. But like I find that, doing extremely fun things is just a way to relax already.
Again,
so maybe that's just really just dependent on the person, right? Yeah, maybe that is dependent on the
Also
person.
depends how you look at things. Some people, as long as it's something that they really enjoy, it's extremely fun.
Yeah.
But for someone, there's things that they really enjoy and there's things that they really, really, really enjoy.
Yeah,
and that separates extremely fun to fun.
Yeah, and I guess so. Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. I think that's all the time that we have for today. Thanks so much to all of our listeners for tuning in. We really do appreciate you. Big thanks to WPTS for providing their studio and for airing us. Casa's really thankful to you guys. But the Chinese American Students Association at Pitt has a couple of big events coming up that we'd like to cordially invite you to. We're bringing in Canto Mando to the University of Pittsburgh on November 10th. The time and place is still tentative, but you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Pitt Casa. That's PITTCASA for updates as that day draws closer. The podcast will be uploaded to SoundCloud and also to YouTube, also at Pitt Casa, in case you want to listen again. That's all for tonight. Thanks so much once again for tuning in. This has been Edward Lin with our wonderful guest, Jeremy Liu. Thanks for joining us. Casa for life.